The last time I had a meeting with one of our assemblymen, he cleared his schedule. He had his chief of staff clear his schedule. He gave me 4 hours. As a parent, he cleared his schedule. And the reason was, he says, everybody's constantly coming in here with all the problems, Steve. You came in here with solutions. I want to hear them. So many times, the stories of the parents and the individuals themselves, Nate, don't get heard. We've had multiple commissioners here. The culture at these agencies, these state agencies, all they hear is complaints. All they hear is the things that aren't working. All they hear is more nonprofits asking for more money to fund more programs. And yet, why is there so many people falling through the cracks?
Welcome to IDD Leader, where human services leaders grow their impact, lead with heart, and build the workplaces our field deserves. I'm your host, Nate Beers. Let's dive in. When we're in leadership, we often see what's missing. We see the problems. Whether it's the compliance issues or the gap in staffing or wherever it is, we see the problems. But what happens when we start to see, and not only see, but lead with solutions? Well, my guest today, Steve Gonyea, is going to tell you an incredible story of how he went from barely ever getting 5 minutes with politicians and decision makers in the government to how one of them opened up his entire afternoon and sat with Steve for 4 hours just to listen to Steve share. Are you serious? Yeah, I'm serious. Steve Gonyea, he's a parent. He's an advocate. He's a former DSP, and he's someone who's made his life's work to get to the people who are usually left out of the conversation. Families, self-advocates, frontline staff. He gets them a real seat at the table, not just a survey, not a 3-minute public comment, an actual seat. Today's conversation is all about how he has done that. And he's going to share multiple solutions, including the story of how a community center got built without any waiver funding, without any government funding, and after most of the disability providers had turned him away. It's incredible. So without further ado, let's dive into this conversation. Before we were on the air, I'd heard you talk about where you have changed the way you do advocacy. I don't know if it was a way that you used to do advocacy or if you've been around groups that just did it really differently. Can you play that out for us a little bit? Describe what's different now from before, or what that contrast is.
Yeah, look, I could probably best explain it this way. When it gets old when you're banging your head against the wall. Myself, I'm talking about. And you can't get an answer for something. And unfortunately, too many times you can't get those answers. So in the very beginning, when I first started doing advocacy, I did it like everybody else, and complained to the same situations and complained, geez, I can't get this support. I can't get this. My son doesn't have this. He needs this particular, he needs therapy. He needs a med change. He needs this. And okay, that's all fine. But when you don't get anywhere, is the answer for me to continue banging my head against the wall? No, I had to realize I had to do something different. And the old way was, Steve, why don't you join us down in Albany at the state capitol, and we'll go down on the bus with our signs, and we'll sit down in the well of the Capitol, and some politicians will come down and hear us and all of that. And I did that for years, and it just got old, and I want to be in a photo op for the politicians. With all due respect, I'm in good terms with a lot of them in our area, but it winds up being a photo op, because you have to understand. And I put myself in other people's shoes a lot. I put myself in their shoes, and I realize that, you know what? They have 100 buses coming in today from morning to night. We're just one of them, and they've got to talk to all these people. Of course, it's going to be a photo op. They're probably exhausted too. So I understand their perspective, but I also realize that, you know what? I can't get anything done that way. So I was going to start my own 501c3 nonprofit. I said, I'm going to do this all myself, all these things that I want to do. And I went to one of the local politicians locally who had gotten to know. And she said, Steve, there's 143 nonprofits in the area. I don't want you to be the 144th, because there's a duplication of services. We have too many right now that that are constantly down in Albany asking for funds and asking for this. And yet all these parents keep coming to me complaining they can't get supports. So it's obviously there's some kind of disconnect with all of that. My point being that I decided not to do the 501c3 at the time. But I did listen to her, the fact that I wanted to take some different roads, and I started doing other things. I started planting seeds everywhere, so to speak. And what I mean by that is I would call that politician who I couldn't get 3 minutes with in Albany, and I'd see if I could get 5 minutes in his office. And I want to, being a constituent, being able to do that. And even sometimes without being a constituent, I could get in her office for a few minutes. The last time I had a meeting with one of our assemblymen, he cleared his schedule. He had his chief of staff clear his schedule. He gave me 4 hours as a
Whoa.
parent. He cleared his schedule. And the reason was, he says, everybody's constantly coming in here with all the problems, Steve. You came in here with solutions. I want to hear them.
Mm.
And I think that's important, because it's important, and it's a different kind of advocacy. Yes. You have to be a little different, to be able to, my wife would say, a little bit of chutzpah, so to speak, to be able to do that. But the bottom line is, I needed them heard, and these kids heard that I work with, and the kids I advocate for, and that needs all kinds of supports that are falling through the cracks. So planting seeds could also be going to one of their events, and I've done that. And so they see me. I've invited them to some of the events we did here with disability stuff. And in the beginning, they didn't show up. But once you have solutions for them, then they did show up. And I'm okay with that, because at the bottom line is, every time I have an event now, they're all there on both sides of the aisle. And they're there because, again, I put myself in their shoes. They're constantly hearing all the things wrong with the systems. And very few people, including, unfortunately, the people at the table making these decisions, who are um, not coming up with the solutions either. They're kind of doing it their own way, and that we've always done it this way, and that trickles down to all those DSPs who will tell you that my boss told me we've always done it this way, um, in that kind of bit. And I just think that, gee, maybe someday you ought to go in one day, just one time, one day, and do something a little differently. And I would bet they're going to see different results, because I did.
Wow. What's give us a moment if you're able to share. I mean, not so much. I'm not trying to ask about his business, but what was a moment when you're in that office for 4 hours? What was a moment when like things really clicked, or when you said a solution and you could see that was really resonating?
Well, he told his chief of staff to take notes. And here I am, just a parent. And again, even with, you know, being able to advocate for my son and getting pretty brave at all of that, I didn't, I, I wasn't even sure he was going to even listen. I wasn't sure he was going to have his chief of staff take notes, but they did. And the reason is because explained the problems, and then I explained how I'm going to fix them, and the solutions, and that they're not used to that. I think, I don't know how else to put it. They're not
So,
used to that.
like, can you give me an example of like one of the solutions that you're talking about?
Yeah, we were building a complex care center in Utica, and
And that's where
there was a
you are, right? You're in Utica, New
I'm
York.
in Utica, New York.
Yeah.
I'd already built an autism barn for my son when he didn't have anywhere to go. And it was supposed to be a 10 by 12 shed. I think I mentioned to you before. And I had to constantly go back to my wife and say, it's got to be a little bit bigger, and got to be a little bit bigger. And it winds up being a 2-story building. All his friends came in, that were, of course, when you're autistic, your friends are going to be autistic, because that's who you go to day program with. That's who you go to events with, is that. So then they wanted to come over, and my son was so thrilled to, be the cool kid now. And because all these people wanted to come over to our autism barn, which is loaded up with, everything you can possibly imagine, from Xboxes on the wall, which they hardly ever use, but record players and drums and guitars and sensory stuff and everything you can possibly imagine. And then the community found out about it. But even with that, building that barn and bringing it to the complex care center, there was still a lot of people out there, with parents out there that had kids and adults that had a lot of needs, and they couldn't go to a rec center. They would get denied. If they had urinary issues, you can't go. If you need a one-on-one aid, DSP, you can't go. If you have seizures, you can't go. If you have mental health issues, you can't go. And you can only come between 3 and 4 o'clock PM after program. And most of these kids want to be like other kids. They want to be able to go at 6 o'clock at night or on a Saturday. They couldn't. There was nothing here. So a group of us as parents decided, you know what, um, we're gonna go build this, and we're gonna find a way to get it done. And we did, and I approached that to the politician who winds up giving us, we had already done a lot of it, but he gave us money to continue operations out of one of their discretionary budgets because of it was solution based and it worked. Look, they could anybody can give money to some great organizations out there that are out, United Way and Easter Seals, all of them. But it's a lot easier to fundraise, which is how we got these things built and used the politicians afterwards. Was we went to community and we said, look, we're going to have this tangible thing here. And then the donors and stuff like that, whoever's going to help us out, even with if they're just painting the walls, they can see something in front of them that's tangible. And too many times you don't. While this particular assembly person, it just blows them away that we did all this without. Do you run this by the state? No, because I'd be in 3 years in committee. And then you tell me I couldn't do it anyways. We just did it. And again,
So you
I
built. Can I interrupt you for a second? Can I
go ahead.
interrupt you? So you built not used singular, you plural, you and the community. You built a community center that's operating.
It's right
How
now. Yes, it's
it's
operating. Yeah,
operating
since
multiple
January.
multiple days a week, or
Yeah, it's 6 days
how
a
did?
week right now.
Okay, 6 days a week,
Yeah,
and people
I
can
want to
come
tell you
and
how we.
yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
I want to back it up a little bit.
Sure, no, that's fine. I just really want to
When I
hear
said
like the actual mechanics, but go ahead.
when I pitched this story, I went to nonprofits in the area in the disability field. You think they're going to be all in? They're going to be all. Everybody's going to say this is great. They all turned me down. They they turned me down. I had to go to the veterans to do it. The Veterans Agency Outreach Center did it. And it's because they get stuff done. They put me on their board. I pitched them what I wanted to do. They said, "Steve, I know you're not a veteran. You're the only one not on the board that's not a veteran. My son is and father and grandfather, but I wasn't." And they put me on the board, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I did know that I have a voice sitting on that board as a parent, and I was able to pitch some of this stuff, and that's how we got the complex care center done. I got a disability bus that runs for. They bought the bus the next day, Nate, after I pitched it to them. Now, mind you, I had pitched this to a lot of nonprofits who all said no, because the first thing that goes up in their heads is when it gets up to, and I don't know if it goes all the way up to the top in management sometimes. Sometimes it's a middle manager just says, no, we can't do it. Too many regs, too many, we don't have drivers, we don't have this, and all the reasons not to. And I couldn't go to the state because they would give me the same issues and roadblocks and no's. And again, it would be in committee for 3 years. And I didn't want to wait. So we just did it. And the bus project that we did, it's kind of related to complex care because that's how a lot of them get there. They go down there nights, weekends. They can go to a baseball game now, like anybody else. And not just that, the rules and regulations, because we don't have any, because it's open to the community. They can take their whole family on the bus, and we don't charge. There's no charge. So of course it's going to be a hit. And then when other communities see that, that's why my phone's ringing off the wall. My wife never sees me anymore because other communities want to do something similar, or they're asking, how did you get that done without all the bureaucracy and regulations that go into an agency that takes care of other people? The bottom line is this: it can be done. It's interesting now that after it's built, all the nonprofits are using the bus and they're using the facility, and the politicians want to come to the next event and donate. And it's that Field of Dreams, before many probably people are listening, but
I know
it's
what you're
my
talking.
model.
I know what you're about
Uh,
to say.
You build it and they come. And that's exactly the model I used, and it worked. Was I sure it was going to work? Nate, I'm being honest. No, I didn't. I had no idea. But I knew it had to be something different, and that's my point. With all of this is, if something's not working, and I'll bring it back to the DSPs again. If you have 70% turnover, which is going on in one of the agencies here, 70% turnover, there's a problem. And I'm not on board with saying it's the DSPs and it's them. It's not. It's everything else that contributes to them not wanting to stay and not wanting to get into it. And there's ways to fix that. And unfortunately, the answer is not to just go, we need 3 DSPs, go apply. There's a different way to do even that hiring process to get people that are dedicated so that I feel comfortable as a parent that they're gonna be able to handle one of the kids we adopted in our house and be able to and give them choice and opportunities that they might not have any other way. And to get those kinds of employees, they're out there. They are absolutely out there. I just think the recruiting methods sometimes, um, you get the same if you do everything the same way, what's that definition of insanity,
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
Um, you're gonna
Same
get this
expecting
basically
different
the
results.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just you're not gonna get different results and why it continues to be an issue. And my point is it doesn't have to be. I think there's a better way.
This is, I mean, first of all, I'm like super inspired and encouraged by what you're sharing. I can't stop smiling. Like, this is just amazing, this story. But yeah, now everybody's on board because they see that it worked. But yeah, in the middle of it or at the front end of it, you're just trying and you're not sure what's going to work and what's not going to work. I hear you on that one. Um, so so now this complex needs center, people can just kind of come with their family members. If it's someone, let's suppose someone that with more limited skill set, that they're not living very independently at all, they need a lot of support. So are they just coming with a family member? Are they
They can
are
come
there
with a
staff there?
DSP.
Are there
They can
staff there
come with
to?
a yes, there is. There's staff that the vets have donated. They're paying their salaries. Um, there's several people that work there. We have it's secure. We have a key method. All they have to do is phone in. They can come in. It's secure, and not just that, but when you have people at the table who understand all of this, and as a parent or even a self advocate, they can tell you what they need. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, they're not at the table. But because I knew what they needed, we put showers in. So if somebody had an accident, nobody cares. You know, there's showers there. We put showers in. There's an elevator in. There's um, different there's sensory rooms that we know that work, and there's other things that we put in there because we know they work. They worked in my barn and they work out there with the parents that were involved all had their say in it and we could build it and it worked. And you could bring a one-on-one aid. If you say you're in a day program, the odds of you going down there, if you have complex needs, it was slim to none in any other rec program in this area. Probably zero. With this one, we've actually had some come from the nonprofits and bring a one-on-one aid with them. And I'm talking complex needs, dual diagnosed individuals that are a lot of work if you don't know how to handle it. But again, we've set things in place down there because we know the stuff works and we can make it easy and in a transition. And we have a kid in my house right now. We just adopted. He's just turned 18. He could be headbanging in my house for a half hour. And if I tell him I'm going, he can go to the autism barn or go down to the complex care center, he stops on the dime. And yet we've actually had case managers come in, try and get him to stop headbanging with master's degree levels, and they can't get him to stop. And the reason is because we included him in the choice and didn't just say, you got to do this, you got to do that.
Wow. So I love so much about what you're sharing. Let's just make this tangible for a moment. This conversation, well, let me put it this way. If you have 5 minutes right now to talk to a CEO or maybe a lot of HR listeners in this audience, probably they're resonating with what you're sharing, but feeling that probably, I would imagine, that tension between, oh my goodness, he went completely outside the box. Like, that wasn't a waiver funded anything. Like, it was just it's a barn raising, like in the olden days, right? Like, the community just came together to raise the barn. What do you think that could translate and look like into their role?
Yeah, I've actually had this conversation. Some people have asked me, and you know what I tell them? I'm not asking them to build an autism barn. I'm not asking them to build an ability bus. What I'm asking them to do is to listen. And it's the most important job of a leader is to listen, in my opinion. You can be a strong leader. And you know what? Um, the ones that I've met that are strong leaders that I respected the heck out of are the ones that listened and valued what everybody else is saying and doing. If I had 5 minutes with somebody, I would say, go down, go talk to some of the parents, Go talk to some of the individuals you care for. Whoever their ability is to relay information to you, take a few minutes of your time and go listen to them, especially their parents, and even their one-on-one aides or DSPs, their caregivers, because you're going to get a lot of information you probably aren't going to get. And I'm going to go out on a limb here with one comment. You can edit later. And that's, I think a lot of times people that get in upper management, and I've seen it in the manufacturing world, and I'll stick to that right now. Um, they surround themselves with people that tell them what they want to hear. And I think that's a lot of, and unfortunately, a lot of times when you become an executive director of a nonprofit, you're not hearing what's really going on. And I think it's important that you get out of your office with all due respect. We know everybody's busy. We know you have a tough job, but get down there and take the time to talk to the DSPs, take the time to talk to the parents and, self advocates and anybody you're caring for. They have valuable information and stuff that you can't ever get anywhere else. Because again, if you surround yourself with yes people and people who tell you what you want to hear all the time, it's all you're ever going to hear. And I've seen it in the boardrooms and a bunch of these nonprofits, and you can just tell that everybody's afraid to say anything. And why maybe if you want to be a really great leader, be the one that says, "Okay, bosses, all you bosses, I'm going to spend some time on the floor tonight. I'm going to cover that. I want to go come in tonight on second shift and see. I want to talk to the DSPs. I want to see what they think." And if we had more of that, I think you give them a sense of belonging themselves by going down there and engaging with them because it's going to blow their mind for one thing. Because I was at DSP, I would when somebody took the time, and I had a couple really good bosses who listened to me when I would bring up ideas, especially on the rec part of it and stuff like that, were out of the box, but they listened. I had total respect. I would have climbed a mountain for them because they just listened. And I think unfortunately, a lot of times it gets lost in everybody's busy lives and all the things that they do. But believe me, you're going the the payback and the results are going to come back. They're going to hit you like a brick wall when you realize the information that you just got. And I've seen it.
Hmm. Wow. This has been such a common thread throughout our conversation, but there's one more thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap it up. There's a new commissioner, as I understand it, at OPWDD, and that's the if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. That's like New York State's,
Yes.
like government version of making sure that waiver funded services and all this stuff is happening, right? Is that the
Yes.
so that's
Oh,
what we're talking about. But then
yes.
there's a listening tour. Tell me there's like a listening tour. It ties right into what you've been talking about. What was your
Yeah.
role with that, or how's that going? Tell us about that?
Yeah, OPWDD, like, and look, there's 50 states. They all have similar organizations called something different to handle the waiver services and the disability population. Um, we've had multiple commissioners here. The culture at these agencies, these state agencies, with all due respect, there's good people there. That's not the road I'm talking about. I'm I'm more talking about the culture. And I even I put myself in their shoes. All they hear is complaints. All they hear is the things that aren't working. All they hear is more nonprofits asking for more money to fund more programs. And yet, why are these people why is there so many people falling through the cracks? We keep giving all these, this money out and all that kind of stuff. Um, with my point being that we had to do something different, and so they ran through a bunch of commissioners, 2 or 3 commissioners in a row. I've talked to all of them over the last 10, 12 years, and um, it's a hard position. I understand that. Well, the New York State Commissioner Willa Bear, she got appointed. I want to say interim probably a couple years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And I didn't waste any time. I had met her a couple times in Zoom meetings because of my advocacy with parent groups. And I wanted her to understand that I wanted a chance to talk to her. So she knew who I was. And on a whim, I sent her a proposal. I think it was, half a dozen pages at least. of this proposal of doing a listening tour. Now, I have to pretext that with you understanding what the culture was. They do focus groups around the state. Most state agencies like this do that. And what they consist of, you have, if you're a parent, you can go to it. They're in like 3 or 4 different parts of the state, usually a long travel for a lot of parents who can't get there during the day. They're usually bad hours because somebody has to work. They're a single mom and all that. And they give you 3 minutes and there's no response. You literally go up there and say your speech for 3 minutes and they don't even respond. They don't even reply. They don't even answer. And I went to some of them and I did that. And I said, no, there's got to be a better way. And I pitched her this listening tour that she could go barnstorm basically across the state and listen to families, not providers, not the executive directors, with all due respect. They all are already at the table. But talk to the parents on the ground at a grassroots level. And I thought that she would read it because like I said, I had pretty good rapport with her through Zooms and all that stuff. I had never met her really. And I invited her to my house in my area. And I says, I want you to talk to 8 or 10 families in each region. We have 5 regions in New York State. And she sends me back a letter. Let's do it. Now, it blew me away for them to change the culture that's been there for forever, and say, let's do it. Um, Now, mind you, she had heard about, because again, if you complete projects and you get you're solution based, she understands that I'm not some, off the wall character trying to, cause her all kinds of grief and more work and all that kind of stuff. But she listened and but the big thing was to me was, instead, because everything is so regulated and controlled, state agencies are always control freaks. They want to control the narrative. That's why they have focus groups for you can't respond, they can't respond, and they're limited to 3 minutes, and then they shut your mic off, all that. This listening tour wasn't that, and the biggest thing that she did was she let me pick the families, and I picked 8 to 10 families in Central New York, and I had parents come in, and I didn't want to go in on one lane. So I didn't want them all autistic parents coming in. I wanted to do different lanes of what I thought were issues in the disability communities across our state. And so they're all coming in different lanes. And she came in with a couple of her staff, and we had it at night. And because I didn't want her blinds. Everybody knows where I live. I was afraid they're all going to show up at my house, all these people. Because I didn't know if I told them, we only want 8 or 10. You can't really get it out there really, because we want her to listen to these stories. We want her to have time to, because we had a certain, time block. And, so we wound up moving it down the library, down the street, which a couple miles down the road. And she came with her staff. Her staff didn't say a word. And I introduced her. Most of them didn't know who she was. They knew her title. They might have known her name, but they had never met her. And I had people tell me that she's never coming, Steve, up until like that 5 minutes before the thing. She's never showing up, Steve. She just pulled one over. And she's never. You're talking about a state worker coming in here at 6, 7 o'clock at night. She's not coming. She came and she listened, and I let all 8, I think it wound up being 8 families total. I was supposed to speak. I gave my time to the other 8 because I wanted their stories heard. I know how to get my story heard with my son, but those families had never been in a situation of advocacy before. They had no idea that she would even listen. She took notes. She had her staff take notes. One particular situation was, um, 2 well, mom who had 2 of her boys stuck in a facility. She's trying to get them out. It's usually the opposite. A lot of
Mm.
times the families are trying to find a residential placement for the kids because they can't handle them. This was just the opposite. And she listened to all these stories, Nate, and I could tell she had teared up over it, and I know she was genuine and real, and it took her out of her element. When you have the big offices down there, it got her out of her element, for one thing, why it worked, and why strongly believe in CEOs and executive directors. Go down to the floor, get out of your environment, go down. Same thing here. I got her out of her environment. She listened to those stories and she took notes, and she says, I can't, and she was honest at the end. You know what? There's a lot of serious things here, and things that we have to work on. But I can promise you one thing, I'm going to try and help you. I'm going to try and fix this stuff. And I don't know for sure what happened about those 2 little boys who had red tape after red tape. Those 2 little boys went home. Now,
Hmm.
are they ever gonna admit that that meeting there, sh she pulled, saying, "What's going on here?" type thing? Um, I don't know, and I wouldn't even I don't even know. But I do know that she got a chance to hear genuine stories because she came down and listened. And I might have nudged her, but it doesn't matter. She came here, and it makes all the difference because then they went to other regions, and it got out across our state quickly. What do you mean she went? The commissioner went to your town? What? And now all these people are calling the commissioner's office saying, can we have a listening tour in our area too?" But it took her out of the way it was always done, which was controlled and not really understanding. I'll leave you with one thing. I know we've probably over so many times the stories of the parents and the individuals themselves, Nate, don't get heard. And it doesn't mean disrespect to anybody else, but say she's meeting with all the executive directors of the nonprofits in the area, or she's meeting with all the deputy in certain areas that deal with the nonprofits. Um, in my opinion, and I've seen it, she's not really getting the full picture. And it's usually their agenda and their take, and it's fine. I want them to have their take. They know the cost. They know all the things that I might not know. But what they don't know is the parents that are down below them who can honestly speak up and say, "Gee, my kid's falling through the cracks. I need some help here. He's not getting services." There was one mom that talked about her kid hasn't been in school for several years. It's just those are the kinds of stories that need to be heard, and it gets filtered if we're not at the table and just the nonprofits are and the management teams of the agencies. If they're the only ones at the table and they're not listening to anybody down below, Nate, the same stuff is going to continue to happen. And why it's so important that they, you know, please come out of your offices and listen to the ones down below. They're going to tell you what's really going on, and not so much maybe supervisors that you have that have never been to the parent's house.
Wow. That is another powerful story. Steve, I feel like our time together went so quickly. This is amazing hearing these different stories. I imagine listeners might want to connect with you. I can put it in the show notes, but is LinkedIn a good way for them to reach out and connect with you if
Yeah,
they want to learn more? And then you have a podcast too. Why don't you tell us the name of that?
yeah, it's finding common ground. We also have a website called F as in Frank, C as in Carl, G as golf, advocacy.org. And we put a lot of our podcasts on there. We also some of the projects that we've completed are on there and stuff like that. But look, um, I'm very transparent, and because I want to be real and genuine, I'm I want you to hand my email address out. I don't care if you hand my phone number out. Um, I'm serious. Have them text me because then if it's from another state, sometimes I don't pick up the. I don't want any more. I won 6 lotteries this week.
Yeah.
Calls.
Okay. Okay.
But if they text me first and say I'm a parent and I'm in Ohio, or wherever, and I'm okay with that. Please, it's okay. Reach out to me by my email. You can put that in the chat. You can put it if you post this out anywhere. Feel free to leave my email. I'm fine with all of that because I want to help. And there's nothing more powerful, Nate, than somebody that lives exactly what they're going through. Nothing. And I also want to give a reach out to all those executive directors out there and all the um, whatever title they go by. They sometimes they're directors, sometimes they're CEOs and all that kind of stuff. Anybody in the management part of DSPs and all that is I'm okay with you reaching out to me too. I would love to speak to you. Nate gave me the platform here to speak to you guys, but I want to be able to um, give a different perspective sometimes. And if somebody ever wants me to give that different perspective, I'm okay with that. Just reach out, call Nate, or me, and I'm okay with any of that kind of follow up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Steve, it's been a delight, and I am so pumped up. I'm so inspired by what's happening. There's a lot that we see that's not good, but then, gosh, solutions, and they're not impossible. They're right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I have one
So,
more thing I wanted to add because I don't wanna miss it. One quick thing, parents have been frustrated about getting information and resources. Maybe a single mom just finds out her kid's autistic. Where do you go? There's agencies. Then they find out they gotta go through intake at OPWDD to get the waiver services before they can even get it, or they find out they gotta wait a year and a half for an autism eval and stuff like that. I and, probably a half a dozen other parents from across the United States just started a new, special needs, directory and resource. It's called specialneeds.help. And if you wanna put that out there, when you go to it, it's nothing like you've ever seen. It's a directory, that's gonna blow your mind. All these agencies have directories, but they're never updated. I'm a parent, I know. There's a lot of information that providers leave, doctors leave. We, wound up getting, the former one of the startup guys who started GoDaddy. He's on our team. We refresh this site every 6 hours, 4 times a day. There's nothing in real time across the United States, in any state you're in, that is better than this. And we're adding content every day, and it's free. There's no charge. And it ties into your zip code. It ties into we know when if there's waiting lists for the doctors, they say they need a specialist. You can, you can tie into that. You can tie into the providers. You can tie in if somebody's just a coach or you need an OT in speech. And eventually in phase 2, we're going to have a parent to parent thing where you're going to be able to talk to a parent with lived experience. And even while we might not be able to solve their kid is in crisis, they need respite, you're going to be able to you're going to be able to talk with a parent who's lived the same exact experience you did. And like I said, there's nothing like it. And we did our homework and we've been working on this for quite a while. I've been on it over a year, with this. And, I say it because it's already been a resource. There's already been families that have been helped find resources. And then to bring it back to some of the people in your audience, we want the provider agencies listed in this. Reach out. There's a way to put your organization in. You can, if you want to list certain services you provide to the IDD community, go ahead and put it in there. Register. You can ask questions. We have an AI that asks questions, and humans behind the scenes too. So
wow,
there's my shameless plug. Like I
I love
said,
it.
nobody we don't get paid. It's and no charge to any parent ever. And it's going to be extremely helpful for anybody struggling to find resources for maybe a condition that their child might have been diagnosed or whatever.
Okay. That's huge. This is amazing. So we're going to have a lot of good things in the show notes here. But Steve, thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. This has
Okay.
been a blast. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor.
Wow. Wow. I just keep coming back to when Steve shared about how the politician said, everybody comes in here with problems. You came in with solutions. And because of that, he got 4 hours instead of 5 minutes. That's not just good advocacy. That's good leadership. There's something for, I think, all of us to learn in that. Now, I always try to leave you with an action step, an action move you could take right away. Here's today's. The next time that you walk into a difficult conversation, whether that's with a board member or a DSP or manager who's frustrated, I want to encourage you, bring one solution. Not just a complaint wrapped in context, not just a correction, but an actual proposal of how things could get made better. See what changes. Now, I don't try to give you 2 action moves, but here's a second one. Reach out to Steve. He's totally reachable. You can find his contact information in the show notes, but he would love to have a conversation with you if you want to hear more of the work that he's doing, or maybe how you could do similar work within your organization or in your community. He is just a truly inspiring guy. I'm so blessed to have had a chance to meet him recently. And yeah, I enjoyed my time with him very much, and I think you would enjoy having a conversation with him. Plus, he's just a wealth of knowledge and resource. So reach out to him. One other thing, I have a free resource for you. If you want to learn more about how to build an awesome culture in your organization, I created the 7 warning signs that your supervisors are accidentally burning out their staff. Here's what happens. We have ideals in one spot, and then we have the realities on the ground. And sometimes those are not aligned. And this resource helps to outline how they're not aligned and then what you can do to help solve it so that your supervisors are, in fact, not just retaining your best staff, but that they're creating an atmosphere and a culture of engagement and where everybody is winning on a regular basis. I almost forgot to tell you where to get it. That would be iddleader.com/burnout. All right. Well, we've got an awesome slate of guests. I already know the next episode. It's been recorded and it was a wonderful conversation. I'll keep it a secret for now, but some outstanding guests coming up and a few more in the pipeline that will come out shortly after that. So until next time, here's to you. Keep up the amazing work.